I'd like to introduce Tracy Abrams, who also loves her job over at Urban Airship. Is that right?
Yeah, it's wonderful.
See, told you, everyone that works at Urban Airship loves their job. I don't know why. I'm sure because they're awesome. All right, and she's going to talk about her own personal adventure, rock climbing and learning programming. I'll let her go.
Awesome. All right. Hi, guys. As Troy said, I'm Tracy. I'm a junior JavaScript developer at Urban Airship on the web team. And you can find me online pretty much everywhere at Hacky Go Lucky. Funny thing happened when I started rock climbing. I kept running into programmers. If I went to top roping at Portland Rock Gym, I'd run into somebody from JS admirers. If I went to the circuit to go bouldering, I'd run into a few PyLadies. I talked to a buddy of mine, and he said, the reason I keep running into programmers is that we really enjoy problem solving, and we can't turn it off. So we end up putting ourselves 30 feet up in the air, and your mind and your body don't really have a choice but to focus on the very present problem at hand. 11 months ago, I decided to quit my job in the healthcare sector and change careers, and wanted to become a professional problem solver. Running into these like-minded individuals at the Rock Gym was confirmation of a path that I was really excited to be on. Maybe also confirmation of a little neuroses. So I dove in head first. What could I do to learn programming? I loved school for being able to devote myself to learning full time. So returning for another degree was my first thought. CS degree is a very thorough but slow way to achieve this, and I am extremely impatient. But also, punching rocks. I don't steer away from pain, and why remove the tortured struggle of having to teach yourself? Taking on another student loan was also not something I was willing to swallow. So I got some really great advice when I was weighing in with people on how to get started. And the first thought was, our first bit of advice was community, which I thought was a little crazy. I'm very independent. I had this idea that programmers are these people who will sit in a dark room late into the night, hacking away, and all alone, which is complete lie. Even if they're alone in the room, they're still surrounded by people online. So I was told to look for the best community you had access to. At the time, I was in Seattle, but I knew I was going to be moving to Portland, and I was told that the Python community was really awesome here. So I dove into coding circles, meetups, and workshops. And then I had to actually start learning. So what did I do to start cramming all of this knowledge in? In climbing, you can't do much without an intro class. You don't have to be fit. You don't have to have crazy muscly arms. But I did try to learn climbing through reading books, lots of technique. It's a great way to get ideas of things, but you have to try them. So it'd be like to try to learn how to program without knowing how to use a keyboard. You can fumble through it. It's going to be very slow and even more painful than it needs to be. So I turned to my friend, the internet. One of the first tools that I used or tried to use were MOOCs, massive online open courses like Coursera. And some of their first classes were CS 101 and CS 102. It was places like Stanford trying to test out, can people learn computer science without having access to smaller groups and their professor? Also places like Khan Academy also followed suit with this. Code Academy was my next foray into actual programming, not just messing around with bits. But it still wasn't programming. It was a bit buggy. They had full tracks with Python. I think since then they've moved on to Ruby. I checked. They do not have anything with Node.js yet, which is a huge bummer. but I think that would also be pretty hard to navigate at this point. They do, however, have great tools for you to be able to learn the basics of JavaScript, HTML, CSS in browser. But also, as part of that, you don't have to deal with any of the pesky business of learning a dev environment, those distractions of knowing how to actually manage those different pieces. While that gave me good practice, I had no idea how to manage the pieces of the stack. And to be fair, I didn't know what that phrase meant anyway. So that, next, was I went back to my old habits and dove back into books. So the public library, you should use it. If you don't have a library card to your local library, you should go home and sign up for one when you get home from the conference. But another problem with that is that they are not up to date. 3-year-old programmer books, not so great when you're learning JavaScript. I actually didn't find out about strict mode until a couple months in, because the book I was reading was so old that strict mode did not exist. So that was a nice wake-up call that programming books are age out. And sort of the opposite of that 3-year-old book on JavaScript is technical blog posts, also tutorials and documentation. So Node is pretty new. It's hard to find a crusty source of info on it. It's more likely to become obsolete because of how swiftly the Node world moves. I found in this that there are so many really great resources. How to Node by Tim Caswell. JavaScript is Sexy is a great blog that kind of runs through a bunch of different resources that you can combine to learn something in the JavaScript world. Also, Substack's Streams Handbook is amazing. Streams are crazy and awesome and very hard to wrap your head around, or for me it is. Also, the Art of Node, I keep track of that on a regular basis. Like, I want to know when it's been updated because I'm trying to teach people Node and I want them to have a great resource for it, and it's awesome. So I want other people to learn it. Node.js.org API docs are really beautiful, to be honest, and they're really clean and concise. I'm still trying to catch up with all the past Node Up episodes on my walks to work each morning. But what I have struggled with as a new programmer is that I need more how-tos. Streams are awesome, and again, they're also very heady for me. Event-based programming is something that people in other high-level languages will avoid if they can. Some people like that pain. Some people just naturally get it. And then some people avoid it like the plague. So many sources of truth to go to as a new programmer in Node.js and JavaScript as well. And I'm not saying that Node.js.org needs to be MDN, but I can say that I wished that it was many times. And like a safety check before I'm starting climbing, I will review all of these things so that when other people ask you, you can say, like, these are the things you should do. Or I met this girl who sounds like she has no idea what she's doing, so you should not go to these things first. So free online courses, they're awesome. They're free. If you don't like one, you can find somewhere else that's trying to teach it in another cool way. In-person workshops are really fantastic. I help organize the weekend PyLadies Hack Days, and you'd be amazed at how much peer teaching ends up happening and how much, when you try and teach something, you learn that you don't know when you're trying to explain it. Programming books and online tutorials focused on what I'm trying to learn short-term and long-term. I will say I can't recommend any one book. I say what I've used to learn. Everybody has a different learning type, so be flexible. If someone's trying to learn something and they're having a hard time, just go grab another book. Go find another resource. Multiple perspectives can be a little bit confusing, but it'll actually help you hone with the questions that you have. So standing armed with my spirit guides my community, and also this hazardous amount of knowledge through all these ways that I've tried to learn. A serendipitous moment occurred where a really great employer was hiring and just happened to want someone who was excited to break a lot of things. I view professional programming as a form of private sector academia. If you can find a good job, you're being paid to learn for 40-plus hours a week. And no, actually, my company was willing to offer me an opportunity to work as a junior developer and learn from a rock awesome mentor while gaining experience in a full dev environment. I did not commit code to production in the first week. There are no bragging rights in that. That would have been a disaster. But I'm still allowed to work there, and that's thanks enough for me. This did give me the most able way possible to, though, break everything over and over again. Not quite explode everything, but you should try. Practice is key. As a new programmer, I think this is something that people take for granted as seasoned programmers, that you should just try over and over again. Getting code on the page is a great thing. As a new programmer, you sort of end up getting this writer's block. Like, if you put something down, you're actually, you're risking, like, something's not going to work. You could break a whole program, but you should try. Practice is key. As a kid, I always dove in. I love to climb trees. I love to go home and work on calculus problems. I had no idea what was going on. Learning through experience and subsequent mistakes was something that I really appreciated. It's also very visceral and immediate. But as I got older, I became a little more willing to allow others to make these moves and watch them falter or flail. This is why I love rock climbing. I am terrified of heights. I'm not kidding. There are days when I'm inside at PRG, I'm 20 feet up in the air, and I'm shaking so hard, I am about to push myself off the wall. I'm totally psyched out, and that's okay. Challenging yourself is good, and my shaky days are becoming fewer between. This is also why I love coding. I'm still struggling as a programmer, of course. And, should I open source my project? Do I want everybody to see it immediately, even if it's very raw? Where do I even start with this feature? Just code. Get it on the page, then fix it, then break it again. It's not doing anything when it's just in your head. So project-based learning is where it's at. In climbing, a project is something you have to keep coming back to and working on. It's a climb you're really going to struggle with, and you'll eventually get it. So this is why I have very little skin left on my knuckles. When I'm fully tuned into my climb and my reflexes are allowing me to think of only what's next in my hold sequence, I'll go for a hold. I'm short, I have to reach for things, and I have to do this with full force. And unfortunately, my aim might be off. Instead of grabbing the hold I'm intending, I end up punching rocks that were much closer and inconveniently in my way. It hurts a bit, it's only skin. Which leads me to, write it all down. You're typing all day. It's okay to write for a little bit. Write down everything you aren't understanding. You write down your big and small victories. You write down all the wild ideas for projects you can't wait to start. This will be a great gauge to see how you're doing. Remember questions to ask people you can't address right this second, and allow you to look back later on and laugh that you had no idea what a stream was. Likewise, in climbing, logging your gear purchase dates and the big falls they've taken is essential. That'll help you decide when to retire your worn-out rope. I've written down so many questions since I've started, so many words I didn't have time to look up. And so the next piece that there's actually a website called this particular thing. I thought I was being very jazzy in this title. And I think it's something that I'd love to contribute to, in that you guys don't just speak a language, you speak another language that outside of the programming world, it's really trippy to listen to. As an outsider for a really long time, kind of nodding your head and going like, later, okay, they say the word optimize a lot, that's cool. So the first instruction you'll receive when you're learning to climb is your safety check. You, the climber, and your partner, the belayer, they must check each other's equipment and redundancies to make sure you're both safe. Then you signal on belay. If your partner's ready to go with their rope and checks, they say belay on. So we've already got this one set of communication. The next thing the climber will say is climbing. They step up to their wall, they're ready to go, but they're not allowed to move until their belayer, the person whose life is in their hands, says climb on. And at that point, both people are engaged, they're watching, they're being careful, and they're still communicating as the climb is going on. Language is innately purposeful in programming. This can be hugely problematic with someone who's career transitioning. Library. That's, a very normal word. Object, thank you, that's super vague. API, what kind? Parse, lexing, side effects, listener. These all have very specific and loaded meanings. So there are chapters of books, whole books even, based on these words. No one warned me of this, nowhere still. I don't really see many places where people will warn you that you should take it's the opposite of a grain of salt. Like every word has meaning, and it's going to take a really long time for you to process all of this. Really hard days are when you don't have the words to articulate the problem that you're having. It's a fun epiphany the day that you realize that variables are actually supposed to communicate a purpose and not just be some cute or cool name. Programmers are clever. I apparently can be dense. I have an ever-growing list of terms used, abused, and mangled by me that I have acquired through my short stint. Thus, phonology, though, is only the start of my transgressions. So what I'm doing wrong, as I started, I can be a hazard. There are many days where I will ask a question and get a very odd response. And why is it odd? Because I knew so little about the problem that I didn't even know what I didn't know. So it comes out of left field for me. Fortunately for me, the person responding usually understands this. So I owe my teammates and my significant other drinks for life. And I need to work on my focus at every level. So something that I've noticed with more seasoned programmers is that a lot of them will work on their level of productivity and their level of focus. It's not just about getting quality code on the page. It's about the rest of their time in the office as well. So things like email distractions, to not choosing a side project to stick to, or having way too many that you're just kind of coding away bits and pieces at all of them. I need to get myself a better fighting chance of growing some really great programmer habits. I'm also still being very impatient and unforgiving of myself. I want to learn it all of it, and now. The Matrix is a really great example of me just wanting to plug all of that knowledge in. It would be a way easier time for me to be able to program if I knew all of it, but that's not nearly as fun. I still hesitate to ask questions as well. So my brain is still trying to process what's being said, and somehow my head will involuntarily nod yes, as I'm still trying to understand what just came out of your mouth. And 5 minutes later, I'll be like, crap, what in the world was he saying? I could also try and get a little more sleep. What I'm doing right. So I'm here, and that's, I love Node. I'm still new in the community, but I'm also not a fan of public speaking. I've worked really hard for the changes that I've made over the past year and other choices I've made in recent years as well. And if I were to stop challenging myself now, it'd all be for naught. Even more so, I feel a sense of responsibility to share my road thus far in the hopes that I can make it an awesome path for others to follow. A few people in the community have gone far, far above what any sane person would do to help me out and help me to program, help me to continue to connect with others who are in the same place that I'm in. And it's a blessing I'm happy to pass on. I'm also meeting others who have the tenacity and curiosity to be a programmer, and they were just never introduced to programming prior. When we were younger, I don't think that it was really marketed as, being able to be a professional problem solver and get paid to learn all day. It wasn't, if somebody had told me that, I would have done it much sooner. It's not about the pay. It's not, the lifestyle perks could be worse. But it's a really fun job. So it's an obsession I'm happy to share, so I am. And what I'm doing now. So a fellow rock-addicted programmer said, sometimes to get to the next level in climbing, you need to go outside of it. You might need to take up yoga or weightlifting to work on strength or flexibility. Likewise in programming, sometimes you need to go sideways to go up. If you want to master Node.js, you'll probably want to spend time outside of it and work on your command line and version control skills. Programming has a huge amount of silos. To go very deep in any one, you need to have competency in many. And Node.js is a special beast. It's a wonderful back-end world that makes JavaScript really beautiful and fun. In order to understand it better, I have to continue working on expanding my skill set. And one of my favorite projects coming up is remember when I mentioned the Python community earlier? I'm still a part of it. I do organize the events on the weekends with PyLadies, and I attended PyCon this year. Jessica McKellar of openhatch.org talked about growing the Boston Python user group to over 1,700 members just through workshops. And I trolled the heck out of them. So I talked to her after her talk, and I followed her back to her booth. And I said, how can I make these workshops work for Node? Like, how do I get people excited about Node.js? And I got a few eye rolls. Speaker on the panel was a Ruby organizer who had actually also gotten assistance from the Python community. The Boston Ruby community has exploded there as well. And when I asked for his advice, especially on changing the tutorials for the Ruby community, he acted like I was going to give him Node.js cooties. He totally backed off. So speaking of Node and our community, I helped Ben and Merlin organize the local Node.js user group, PDX Node, and we could use more friends. I'm really excited about helping to organize our user group here in Portland. And I'm also brainstorming with them as to how we can build things like Welcome to Node.js Nodecopters workshop. We just got to fiddle with the Nodecopters last week in a smaller group setting before the conference, and we had a lot of fun, and people were able to do it at every level. They were able to work on on your computer. You could mess with the API. You could have it up and running in a minute after you download the app on your phone, and it's really encouraging to be able to have these different levels of skill to be able to work on this. Also, one of the earlier projects I created when I was starting in Node was an IRC bot, and it's actually really simple. At PyCon, they had some projects featuring an IRC bot with Twisted, and I was really, really shocked to see how many lines of code that was. It's very, it's not Python, and to know how simple it was with Node really tickled me. I was like, it's nice when Node.js is much prettier than Python. I really like it. Ultimately, I'd love to document these workshops so that other user groups can get people learning Node.js and hook them into the community as well. So working on challenges in both rock climbing and coding is a life I'm happy to share. So if you're interested, you should join us monthly. We have the first Thursday meetup presentation nights, third Thursday hack nights, also trying to work on the workshops. And if you're interested in working out a little of your keyboard aggression on some rocks, I know a few places. So either way, roughing up your hands is part of the learning process. I had also considered rappelling down from the ceiling as part of my intro to the talk, but I thought it might be a little awkward when I'd have to ascend during the next talk. It would have taken like 15 minutes and been really awkward. So if you're interested in getting anybody else in the community, you've had experiences similar or different, you want to tell me I'm wrong, you want to play devil's advocate, come talk to me. I'd love to talk. That's it.